Mom, we're leaving tomorrow. I sold your beach house. The phone went dead, and in that moment I remembered the one thing my daughter had completely forgotten. I was sitting in a faded plastic chair outside the doctor's office when my phone vibrated in my hand. The room smelled like disinfectant and old magazines. A daytime talk show murmured from a wall-mounted TV no one was watching. I almost didn't answer, but when I saw my daughter's name on the screen, I picked up immediately. "Hello, Angela?" I said, forcing cheer into my voice. Her tone was flat, distant, not the voice of the little girl who used to call me 5 times a day just to tell me what she'd eaten for lunch. "Mom," she said quickly, "Edward and I are leaving for Europe tomorrow." I smiled, confused. "Tomorrow? That's sudden. Is everything all right?" "Yes, and listen, I don't have much time." She inhaled sharply, then dropped the words like stones. "I sold the beach house and your truck. We needed the money. You'll see your portion in your account." I laughed at first, not because it was funny, because my mind refused to accept it. "You what?" I whispered. "We did what had to be done," she continued, her voice strangely calm. "You weren't really using them anyway. You'll be fine. Goodbye, Mom." The call ended. Just like that. 45 years of motherhood reduced to a 30-second conversation. I sat there frozen, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dull beep of a disconnected call. Around me, people coughed. A nurse called someone's name. Life continued, indifferent to the fact that mine had just cracked open. My name is Antonia Brooks. I am 71 years old, and until that moment, I believed I had raised a daughter who loved me. 6 months earlier, I had buried my husband. Robert and I had been married for 45 years, longer than many people stay alive. He died the way he lived, quietly. One moment we were sharing breakfast, the next he was slumped forward, his coffee spilling across the table. His last words were spoken gently, just as he always spoke to me. "Good morning, my love." After his death, the world felt hollow. Angela stepped in, or so I thought. She visited often, helped with errands, sat beside me at the funeral, holding my hand. She even insisted I see a doctor. "You're alone now, Mom. You have to take care of yourself." She'd softly. I mistook her concern for devotion. I see that now. The beach house she sold wasn't just property. It was our refuge. Robert had saved for years to buy it when Angela was a teenager. Every summer, every holiday, every memory that mattered lived within those walls. And the truck, my God, that truck still smelled like Robert. He polished it every Sunday like it was sacred. And my daughter sold them both without asking. I should have cried. I expected to. Instead, something inside me went very still. Because in that moment, sitting in a doctor's waiting room with betrayal ringing in my ears, I remembered something I had forgotten. 3 days before Robert died, he had handed me a thick manila envelope. "Put this away," he said. "Don't open it until you're ready." I had tucked it into my dresser and buried it beneath grief. And now, suddenly, I knew. Whatever Angela believed she had taken from me, she had no idea what I still possessed. That envelope was waiting at home, and what it contained would turn my daughter's world upside down. The nurse finally called my name. I stood up slowly, my legs stiff, my mind somewhere far from that sterile hallway. The doctor spoke kindly, checked my heart, my blood pressure, my reflexes. He smiled and told me what I already knew. "You're doing well for your age, Mrs. Brooks. Just rest more, eat properly." I nodded, thanked him, and left with a polite smile, the kind women my age have perfected. But inside, I was already walking back through my front door, already opening a dresser drawer that hadn't been touched in months. I no longer had a car. According to my daughter, it was gone. So I waited for the bus. As I sat by the window, watching the city slide past, couples arguing, mothers dragging tired children, men staring at their phones, I felt something unexpected settle over me. Come. Angela thought she had stripped me down to nothing, but grief had already taken everything that could hurt me. What she had done didn't break me. It clarified me. When I reached home, the house felt quieter than usual. Not sad, just honest. I walked straight to my bedroom, knelt in front of the old wooden dresser, and pulled open the bottom drawer. The envelope was still there, yellowed slightly at the edges, my name written in Robert's steady handwriting. My hands trembled as I lifted it, not from fear, but from recognition. I had loved this man for decades. I knew that look, that careful preparation. Robert never did anything halfway. I sat on the bed we had shared for nearly half a century and opened the envelope. The first thing I saw was paper, a lot of paper. Deeds, statements, certificates, stamped documents, folded with surgical precision. And a letter. I unfolded it slowly. My Antonia, if you are reading this, I am gone. I didn't tell you everything while I was alive because I wanted your days to be peaceful, but I never wanted you unprotected. My breath caught. Robert explained what I never knew. Over the years, he had invested quietly, patiently. Properties, shares, accounts. Not one beach house, but 7 properties. Not just savings, but ownership stakes in companies whose names meant nothing to me yet. Then I saw it, the address of the apartment building where Angela lived. My heart pounded. Robert had been the silent owner for years, operating through a company registered under his name. And, according to the documents, I was now the sole beneficiary. The numbers made no sense. I read them again and again. My husband, a man who drove a bus for 40 years, had built a fortune without ever letting it change the way we lived, without telling me, without telling our daughter. His words explained why. If Angela ever knew how much we had, she would love us differently. I wanted her love to be real. Tears blurred my vision. My daughter had sold my home thinking she was taking everything. In truth, she had stolen crumbs. I barely slept that night. The next morning, my phone rang. Angela. Her voice was lighter now, falsely gentle. We transferred your share, she said, 30%. That should be enough for you to manage a small place. 30% of my own life. I thanked her, asked when she was leaving, wished her a safe trip. And when the call ended, I laughed, not from bitterness, from understanding. That afternoon, I watched from my kitchen window as Angela and Edward loaded suitcases into a taxi. They didn't look up, didn't wave, didn't hesitate. They believed they had won. That was when I called Mr. Peterson, the lawyer who had handled Robert's affairs. I need to see you, I said calmly, immediately, because now it was my turn to plan. Angela thought she had taken my future, but the next move would decide hers. Mr. Peterson's office was downtown, inside an old stone building with marble floors and tall windows that made everything feel official, permanent, the kind of place where mistakes are expensive and secrets are well kept. He greeted me kindly, the way people do when they think you're fragile. "How have you been holding up, Mrs. Brooks?" he asked. "I'm doing better than I look," I replied and placed Robert's envelope on his desk. As he flipped through the documents, his expression changed, curiosity giving way to surprise, then something close to admiration. "Your husband was very thorough," he said carefully, "and very intelligent." "So I've discovered," I replied. He confirmed what I already knew. Everything was legal, properly registered, and fully mine. And then came the sentence that hardened my resolve. The sale of the beach house was illegal. Your daughter had no authority. I felt no satisfaction, only clarity. We can reverse it immediately, and we can also pursue fraud charges if you wish." I shook my head. "No legal action, not yet." He looked up sharply. "I want control," I said, quietly, "and I want no one to know I'm involved." After a moment, he nodded. "That can be arranged." When I left his office, I walked slower than usual, not from weakness, but intention. I had spent most of my life reacting to marriage, to motherhood, to grief. Now, for the first time, I was moving deliberately. The following weeks unfolded in two lives. Publicly, I was exactly what Angela believed I was, an abandoned widow. Neighbors offered sympathy. The grocery clerk spoke to me softly. My longtime neighbor Aurora asked if I needed help paying bills. Privately, I was reclaiming everything. The beach house was returned to me without drama. The buyers were reimbursed. No one asked questions. No one mentioned my daughter. The apartment building took longer. Paperwork, corporate restructuring. But slowly, ownership transferred fully into my name. Angela never called. Not once. I thought about her often, but not with anger, with something heavier. One afternoon, I took the bus to the coast. The beach house stood exactly as it always had. Same pale walls, same porch facing the sea. Someone had placed new plants near the steps, strangers trying to root themselves in memories that weren't theirs. An older man stepped outside and noticed me watching. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked. "I'm just remembering," I said. He explained how they'd been told the house belonged to a sick elderly woman whose daughter had to sell quickly. I thanked him politely. Angela had lied about me, used my vulnerability as justification. That hurt more than the theft. That night I called Mr. Peterson again. "There's one more thing," I said. "My husband's truck." A pause. "That will be complicated. Your daughter had power of attorney." The memory surfaced instantly. Papers Angela had brought me to sign when grief had made everything blurry. "Yes," I said. "I remember now." "We can still try." "Then try," I replied. Days passed, weeks. I lived simply, walked the neighborhood, smiled at concerned faces, played my part perfectly. Then, one afternoon, Aurora came rushing over. "Antonia, have you heard?" she whispered. "Edward is in trouble. Banks are looking for him. Something about loans tied to their apartment." I thanked her calmly and closed the door. Inside, I allowed myself a single breath of anticipation. That evening, Mr. Peterson called. "Mrs. Brooks, Edward took loans against a property he doesn't own. The banks are furious." "And my daughter?" I asked. "She may be forced to return." I sat at the kitchen table with Robert's documents spread before me. Angela believed she had escaped consequences, but consequences had already booked her return ticket. Angela was coming home, and this time she would walk into a reality she never imagined. Angela returned on a gray Tuesday evening. I didn't see her arrive, but Aurora did, and Aurora never missed anything. "She's looked awful," she told me, lowering her voice like it was a confession. "Only one suitcase, no Edward. She couldn't even open the apartment door. Had to ask the superintendent for help." I thanked her and closed the door gently. So Edward had stayed behind, or fled. Either way, my daughter was alone. The next morning, Mr. Peterson called. "She received the letter yesterday," he said. "The eviction notice?" I asked. "Yes, 30 days. I stared at my kitchen wall for a long moment after hanging up. That letter wasn't revenge. It was a mirror. At exactly 8 o'clock the following morning, my phone rang. "Mom?" Angela's voice cracked instantly. "Please tell me you know something about this." "About what, honey?" The letter, it says I have to leave my apartment. It has some company's name on it. I've never heard of them." "Robert Investments?" I asked casually. "Yes, do you know them?" I paused, just long enough. "No," I said softly, "but maybe you should talk to a lawyer?" Silence. Then sobbing. "Edward left me," she whispered. "He ran off with someone else. The business was a lie. And now this." The daughter who once dismissed me in seconds was now unraveling in minutes. "Come over," I said. "We'll talk." When she arrived, I barely recognized her. Her clothes were wrinkled, her eyes hollow. The confidence that once filled every room she entered was gone, replaced by something fragile and frightened. She hesitated in the doorway. "Can I come in?" That alone told me how far she had fallen. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had read Robert's letter weeks earlier. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything." I listened. I didn't interrupt. Edward's debts, forged signatures, Europe collapsing into lies, her life reduced to a single suitcase. "I have nowhere to go," she whispered. "I thought maybe I could stay here for a little while." I looked at her carefully. This was the moment I had imagined 100 times. "Of course," I said. "You're my daughter." Relief flooded her face. She hugged me like someone clinging to a lifeboat, and I hugged her back, measured, steady, controlled. That night she moved into her old bedroom. I watched her unpack the remnants of a life she once believed was untouchable. Then she found it, a small manila envelope tucked inside one of Edward's boxes. "Mom," she said, "this has your name on it." My heart skipped, but I showed nothing. Inside was a key and a letter from Robert. She read it aloud. "A safety deposit box." Hope lit her eyes like a match. The next day we went to the bank. Inside the box were jewels, family heirlooms, investments, quiet wealth Robert had prepared for exactly this moment. Angela gasped. "This could fix everything," she whispered. And yet, even now, her first instinct was to sell, to erase consequences with money. I let her, because some lessons require sacrifice. Over the following days, I watched her calculate, negotiate, plan. She sold the jewels piece by piece, trading history for survival. And then she did something I didn't expect. She got a job. Cleaning offices. Nights. She came home exhausted, humbler, quieter, and slowly different. One evening she said, "Mom, I ruined everything, didn't I?" I didn't answer right away, because the real truth, the one she didn't yet know, was far bigger and far closer. She believed she'd reached the bottom, but the truth was still waiting to be revealed. Angela's life shrank quickly. The woman who once argued over restaurant reservations now counted grocery coupons. The same hands that had signed contracts without reading them scrubbed office floors at night. She never complained, not once, but I could see the toll in her posture, in the way she removed her shoes at the door like her bones had aged 20 years in a month. She woke before dawn to job interviews and returned after midnight from cleaning shifts. Rejection followed her everywhere. "They say my credit history is too complicated," she told me one morning, forcing a tired smile. "One place offered part-time work, but it's temporary." I nodded. I made tea. I said nothing, because struggle was doing what lectures never could. One evening, I overheard her speaking softly on the phone. "No, I don't blame you," she said. "I trusted him. That part is on me." When she hung up, she sat at the table staring at nothing. "Mom," she said, "do you think I became selfish?" The question surprised me. "I think you forgot what stability feels like," I replied carefully, and mistook excitement for happiness. She absorbed that in silence. Meanwhile, Mr. Peterson called me regularly. Edward's situation was worsening. International fraud, false documents, evidence piling up, and most importantly, proof that Angela's signature had been forged. She can be legally cleared of all debts, he told me, completely. Good, I said, but not yet. Every night I watched my daughter return home smelling of cleaning solution at exhaustion, and every night I reminded myself why I was waiting. One night Aurora visited. "I've never seen Angela like this," she said quietly. "She's humble." "Yes," I replied. "She's learning." Aurora studied me. "And you're letting her?" "Yes." The next week, Angela sold the last of the jewels. She placed the cash on the table like it weighed more than gold. "This is everything," she said. "It hurts, but it feels necessary." I watched her sort debt papers carefully, prioritizing responsibility over panic. Then she surprised me again. "I want to help someone," she said one night. "One of the women I work with can't afford childcare. I thought maybe—" she hesitated. "I know I don't have much, but I want to help anyway." That's when I knew the transformation had begun. That night, Mr. Peterson called. "We found Edward," he said. "Paris, fake marriage attempt. He's going to be arrested." "And Angela?" "With the evidence we have, she's legally innocent." I closed my eyes. It was time. The next morning, I told Angela we had an appointment with a lawyer. She looked nervous. "Mom, I can't afford—" "I already spoke to him," I said. "Just listen." At the office, Mr. Peterson handed her the first folder. Her confusion turned into disbelief. "I'm not responsible for any of the debts?" she whispered. "That's correct." She cried, but softly, relieved tears. Then he handed her the second folder, the truth. Deeds, accounts, ownership papers. Her hands shook. "Mom," she whispered, This says you own everything." "Yes." The silence stretched. "You knew this the whole time?" she asked. "Yes." "Why?" Her voice cracked. I looked at her, truly looked. "I think you didn't need saving, you needed understanding," I said gently. She collapsed into tears, not desperation this time, but realization. "I abandoned you," she sobbed, "and you still saved me." I held her hand. "You learn to stand on your own first. That's what matters." She nodded slowly. "I won't quit my job," she said suddenly. "I need to remember this version of myself." I smiled, because she finally understood wealth. But the real test wasn't forgiveness, it was who she chose to become next. The truth didn't explode the room the way I expected. There was no shouting, no accusations, just a long, heavy silence that sat between us like a third person at the table. Angela stared at the documents again and again, as if reading them enough times might change their meaning. "You could have stopped all of this," she said quietly. "Yes." Her shoulders slumped. "You watched me struggle. You watched me clean offices. You watched me sell Grandma's jewelry." "Yes." She looked up at me then, not angry, not hurt, but humbled. "And you still let me," she whispered. I reached across the table and took her hand. "I didn't let you suffer," I said carefully. "I let you grow." That broke her. She cried the way adults cry when something inside them finally gives way, without drama, without defense. "I thought love meant being rescued," she said. "I thought if someone loved me, they would fix everything." I shook my head gently. "Love means believing you're strong enough to face the truth." Mr. Peterson excused himself quietly, leaving us alone. When Angela finally wiped her eyes, she straightened her back, the same posture she had as a little girl when she realized she had done something wrong but wanted to do better. "I want to make this right. Not with money, with actions." She meant it. Even after learning she was debt-free, even after knowing I could support her completely, she kept her cleaning job. "I need to finish what I started," she told me. "If I walk away now, I'll forget." She began paying part of the household expenses, insisting on it, not because I needed the money, but because she needed the responsibility. Aurora noticed immediately. "She's different," she said one afternoon. "Not broken, grounded." Angela started volunteering on weekends, first at a community center, then helping women navigating financial abuse. She didn't talk about it much, but I saw the change in how she listened, how she asked questions, how she no longer assumed she knew best.
One night she came home smiling, truly smiling. "I signed up for classes," she said. "Social work." I raised an eyebrow. "I want to help people before they fall as far as I did. Not rescue them, guide them." That word mattered. Guide. Months passed quietly. Edward was arrested abroad, deported, convicted. Angela read the letter he sent from prison once, then burned it. "I don't hate him," she said calmly. "I just don't owe him my future." We returned to the beach house together for the first time since everything. Angela stood on the porch Robert had built and whispered, "I treated this place like a number." She apologized again, but this time without desperation. We decided to turn the house into something new, a temporary refuge for women starting over. "Dad would have liked that," she said. "He would have loved it." One evening, Aurora asked me something that stayed with me. "Do you regret waiting so long to help her?" I thought carefully. "No," I said. "I regret that she had to learn the hard way, but not that she learned." Angela overheard us. She shook her head. "I don't," she said. "If you had saved me sooner, I would have stayed the same." That's when I knew. The lesson had taken root. Years later, when people ask how I forgave my daughter so completely, I tell them the truth. Forgiveness was never the challenge. Respect was. And she earned it, step by step. But healing doesn't end with forgiveness. It begins with purpose.
Healing didn't arrive all at once. It came quietly, in routines, in small decisions, in the way Angela began to carry herself through the world. She kept her job for months longer than she needed to. Every night she came home exhausted, smelling of disinfectant, her hands rougher than they'd ever been. And yet there was pride in her eyes, the kind that can't be bought. "I finished my shift early tonight," she said one evening, setting her keys on the table. "Mrs. Johnson showed me how to organize the supply carts better, made everything faster." Mrs. Johnson again. That woman had become an invisible mentor, someone who never knew she was teaching my daughter the most important lessons of her life. Angela started saving small amounts from each paycheck, not because she had to, but because she wanted to prove to herself that she could. "I need to know I can survive without shortcuts," she told me once. I let her. Our relationship changed too. She no longer spoke at me, she spoke with me. She asked my opinion, listened, apologized when she was wrong. The entitlement that once shadowed her every word was gone. One afternoon, I came home to find her sitting at the dining table, surrounded by notebooks. "What's all this?" I asked. "Applications, scholarships, training programs, volunteer placements." "You don't need scholarships," I reminded her gently. "I know, but I want to earn my place." That sentence alone told me everything. The beach house renovation began slowly. Angela insisted on helping, sanding railings, scrubbing floors, painting walls herself. This place shouldn't just be restored, it should be repurposed. The idea of turning it into a refuge grew naturally, a home where women could pause, breathe, and rebuild without shame. On opening day, Angela stood nervously by the door, greeting the first guest. "She's scared," she whispered to me later. "She reminds me of how I felt when I came back." That night, I saw my daughter comforting a stranger with patience I'd never seen in her before. She wasn't rescuing, she was listening. Edward faded into the background of our lives. His name no longer carried power. His letters went unopened. His story ended the moment Angela stopped defining herself by it. One evening, months later, Angela sat beside me on the porch. "Do you know what the hardest part was?" she asked. "What?" "Realizing that losing everything was my own doing." I nodded. "But also realizing," she continued, "that hitting bottom didn't mean I was worthless. It meant I finally stopped lying to myself." That was growth, the kind that doesn't announce itself. Aurora noticed it too. "She walks differently now," she said, "like someone who knows where she's going." Angela eventually left the cleaning job, not out of relief, but completion. She said, "I learned what I needed to learn."
She started working full-time in community outreach, balancing work with her studies. She paid her share at home without being asked. She treated my space and my time with respect. One night, as we cleared the table after dinner, she stopped suddenly. "Mom, thank you." "For what?" "For trusting me enough to let me fail." I smiled. "I trusted you enough to let you find yourself." She hugged me, not out of desperation this time, but equality. 2 women, 2 survivors, and finally a bond built on truth instead of illusion. But just when we believed the past was behind us, it tried to return one last time. We were finally settled into something that felt like peace. Not the fragile kind, the real kind, built on routines and honesty. Angela studied in the mornings and worked in the afternoons. I managed the foundation quietly, keeping my name out of public conversations the way Robert would have wanted. The beach house shelter was full for the first time, its rooms echoing with cautious laughter and new beginnings. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived. Angela was the one who opened it. Her face tightened instantly. "It's from France," she said. I didn't need to ask from whom. She sat down slowly, staring at the envelope as if it might explode. "He's asking to see me," she said. "He says he's changed." I said nothing. Not because I had no opinion, but because this decision wasn't mine. She read the letter once, then folded it carefully. "I don't feel angry," she said after a long pause. "I don't feel anything at all." That was progress. "I think that's the answer," I replied. She nodded and placed the letter in the fire. Watching it burn didn't feel dramatic, it felt final. A week later, another surprise came. A woman arrived at the shelter with 2 children and a familiar last name, Johnson. Angela froze when she read the intake form. "Mrs. Johnson?" she asked quietly. "Yes," the woman replied. It was the sister of the woman who had trained Angela during her cleaning job. She had left an abusive marriage with nothing but courage and a borrowed car. Angela worked with her tirelessly, finding housing, arranging legal help, advocating fiercely. Later that night, she said, "I understand now. People don't need saving, they need dignity." The circle was closing. Then the call came. Edward had been released early, deportation finalized. He was back in the country. Angela didn't panic, she didn't cry, she simply asked, "Can I stay busy tomorrow?" She volunteered double shifts at the shelter. 2 days later, he showed up, not at our door, at the shelter. He looked smaller, older, defeated. Angela stood still when she saw him. "I just wanted to apologize," he said. She studied him, not with fear, not with anger, but clarity. "I forgive you," she said calmly, "but forgiveness doesn't mean access." He nodded, left without argument. That night, Angela cried, not because she missed him, but because she had finally closed that chapter herself. "I didn't need you to protect me," she told me later. "I needed to protect myself." I squeezed her hand. "You did." And then something unexpected happened. The shelter received a donation, anonymous, large, enough to expand. Angela looked at me suspiciously. I raised my hands. "Not me." The note simply read, "Thank you for teaching me to stand again." Angela smiled softly. "Maybe this is what real wealth looks like." I nodded. The past had come back, not to haunt us, but to confirm we had outgrown it. And just when we thought the story was finished, a final choice would redefine everything. The donation changed more than our budget. It changed Angela. For days, she reread the note that came with it, not because of the amount, but because of the message behind it. Someone had stood back up, someone had moved forward, and somehow she had helped make that possible. "I never felt this way when I had money before," she admitted one night. "Back then, money felt like power. Now it feels like responsibility." That distinction mattered. The shelter had expanded. 2 new rooms, a counseling office, childcare during appointments. Angela worked harder than anyone, not because she had to, but because she wanted to deserve the trust being placed in her. Then she came to me with a question I knew would arrive eventually. "Mom, what happens to everything when you're gone?" I looked at her carefully. "Why are you asking?" "Because I don't want to inherit anything I didn't earn, and I don't want this foundation to become another thing people fight over." I smiled. "That's why I trust you with it." She shook her head. "No, I don't want control. I want structure." So we met with Mr. Peterson again. Together, we rewrote the future. Trusts, boards, safeguards, clear rules that protected purpose over ego. Angela insisted on limits, on accountability, on systems that would outlive both of us. "I never want to become the person who thinks ownership equals entitlement," she said. That sentence told me she was ready. A month later, something unexpected happened. Angela declined a high-paying offer. "They want me in administration," she explained. "Less people, more paperwork." "And that's bad?" "It's safe," she said, "and I don't want safe. I want useful." She chose fieldwork instead, chose messy, chose uncomfortable, chose growth. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun lower itself into the street, she said something I will never forget. "I used to think you were old-fashioned," she said gently, "that you lived small." I raised an eyebrow. "And now?" "Now I see you lived intentionally." That was worth more than any apology. Aurora noticed it too. "She carries herself like someone who knows who she is," she said. "She does," I replied, "and she earned that." Weeks passed, the shelter thrived. Women came and left stronger. Children laughed again. Then Angela surprised me one last time. She handed me a folder. "What's this?" "My resignation letter." My heart jumped. "I'm not leaving the work," she clarified quickly. "I'm changing how I do it." She had been accepted into a long-term community leadership program, unpaid, demanding, deeply rooted in service. "They told me it would slow my career," she said. "I told them I wasn't in a race." I laughed softly. That night, I looked at Robert's photograph before bed. "She found her way," I whispered, and I felt it, that quiet certainty that everything had unfolded exactly as it was meant to. But life never ends a story without one last test. The phone rang the next morning. A lawyer, not ours. There was a dispute, a challenge to the foundation. Someone wanted control, and they were prepared to fight. The final battle wasn't about money, it was about values.
The lawyer's voice on the phone was polite but firm. "There's a formal challenge to the foundation's structure," he said. "A claim has been filed questioning ownership and decision-making authority." I wasn't surprised. We had built something meaningful, and meaning always attracts attention, not all of it good. "Who filed it?" I asked. He hesitated. "A distant relative of your late husband, someone who believes family assets should remain private." Private. That word again. The same excuse people use when they want control without responsibility. I thanked him and hung up. Angela was already watching me from across the room. "It's starting, isn't it?" she asked. "Yes," I said calmly. "But this time, we're ready." We met with Mr. Peterson that afternoon. The challenger wasn't after money, not really. He wanted influence, power, a seat at the table without having earned it. He's arguing that the foundation dilutes family wealth, that it should be managed exclusively by blood relatives. Angela leaned forward. "And what does he contribute?" "Nothing," Mr. Peterson replied bluntly. Angela smiled, not mockingly, but confidently. "Then he doesn't understand what this is," she said. The case moved quickly. Papers, depositions, long meetings that drained energy but sharpened purpose. I watched Angela through it all, calm, prepared, unshaken. Months ago, she would have panicked. Now she asked questions, took notes, thought strategically. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, she sat beside me at the table. "I think I finally understand something," she said. "People fight hardest over things they didn't build." I nodded. The hearing was scheduled for early morning.
We walked into the courtroom side by side, not as mother and daughter bound by obligation, but as partners bound by values. The opposing lawyer spoke about legacy, entitlement, tradition. Angela listened quietly. Then it was her turn. She stood. "This foundation was never meant to preserve wealth," she said clearly. "It was meant to preserve dignity." The room stilled. She spoke about accountability, about systems that protect people, not egos, about responsibility that doesn't end with inheritance. "I didn't earn this money," she said honestly, "but I did earn the right to help decide how it's used." That honesty carried weight. The ruling came days later. Challenge dismissed. The foundation stood. When Angela read the decision, she didn't celebrate. She exhaled. "That chapter's closed," she said. We went to the beach house that weekend, sat on the porch as the ocean breathed in and out. "You know," she said quietly, "if you had given me everything right away, I would have lost all of this." I smiled. "You had to meet yourself first," I replied. She reached for my hand. "Thank you for trusting me enough not to rescue me." The sun dipped low, and for the first time, I knew this story wasn't about loss or revenge. It was about becoming. But just when peace seemed permanent, life asked one final, unexpected question. Peace has a strange way of revealing what still matters. After the court decision, life slowed down in the best possible way. The shelter ran smoothly. Angela settled into her leadership program. I returned to my quiet mornings, tea, sunlight through the kitchen window, Robert's photo watching over us like a gentle witness. That's when the question arrived. Not from a lawyer, not from a stranger, from my own body. I collapsed one afternoon while watering the garden. Nothing dramatic, just dizziness, then darkness. When I woke, Angela was sitting beside my hospital bed, gripping my hand like she might lose me if she let go. The doctor spoke gently, the way they do when the words carry weight. "Your heart is tired," he said. "Not failing, but asking for rest." Angela nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. At home that evening, she barely let me out of her sight. "You should slow down," she said. "Let me take care of things." I studied her carefully. "No," I said. "I'll rest, but I won't disappear." She swallowed hard. "I'm not ready to lose you," she whispered. That was the moment I realized that everything I had done, the waiting, the restraint, the quiet strength, had worked. She didn't need me anymore. She wanted me. A few days later, she asked the question, "What do you want now, Mom?" The simplicity of it stunned me. For decades, my life had been about service. Wife, mother, caretaker. Even my silence had been a form of protection. Now, someone was asking me what I wanted. "I don't know," I admitted. So we talked, not about money, not about legacy, about mornings, about rest, about joy. "I want to travel," I said finally. "Not to escape, to see." Angela smiled through tears. "Then we'll make that happen." Weeks later, arrangements were made, not rushed, not dramatic. Angela stepped fully into leadership at the shelter. The board supported her unanimously. "You built this," one woman told her. "You should guide it." I watched my daughter accept that responsibility with humility, not hunger. On my last night before leaving, Angela sat with me on the porch. "I used to think strength meant control," she said. "Now I know it means restraint." I squeezed her hand. "And trust," I added. She nodded. "Promise me something," she said. "What?" "That you'll come back." I smiled. "I'm not running away. I'm just walking forward." As I packed my small suitcase, I paused by Robert's photo. "She's ready," I whispered, "and so am I." The morning I left, Angela hugged me tightly. "Thank you," she said. for everything you didn't do as much as everything you did. That's when I knew. The greatest inheritance I could leave her wasn't money or property or protection. It was freedom. But distance has a way of revealing truths, and mine was waiting just beyond the horizon.
The first morning away felt unfamiliar. Not lonely, just quiet in a way I hadn't experienced in decades. I woke in a small seaside town, sunlight slipping through thin curtains, the sound of waves replacing traffic and responsibility. For the first time in my life, no one needed anything from me. I made tea slowly, sat by the window, let the day arrive without urgency. Angela called later that morning. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "Very well," I replied. "Good," she said. "I didn't." We both laughed. Distance softened us. Our calls were no longer filled with logistics or problems. They were filled with stories. Angela told me about a woman at the shelter who found her first apartment, about a child who smiled again, about her first real leadership mistake and how she fixed it. She didn't ask for permission, she asked for perspective, and that made all the difference. One afternoon, while walking along the shore, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't worrying. Not about Angela, not about money, not about the future. I had spent years believing that love meant vigilance. Now I understood that love could also mean release. A week later, I received a handwritten letter from Aurora. She wrote about the garden, about neighborhood gossip, about how proud she was of Angela. "She's become someone people trust," Aurora wrote, "not because she demands it, because she earns it." I folded the letter carefully. That night, I dreamed of Robert. He stood at the edge of the water, smiling. "You did well," he said. "I was afraid," I replied. "So was I," he said, "but fear doesn't disappear, it just changes shape." When I woke, my chest felt lighter. Halfway through my trip, Angela surprised me with a visit. She didn't tell me she was coming. I heard her laugh before I saw her, stronger, steadier than before. "I had to see you," she said. "I needed to know you were really enjoying this." We walked along the shore together, like old friends, not caretaker and child. "Do you regret anything?" she asked. I thought carefully. "I regret not trusting silence sooner," I said. "It has a lot to teach." She nodded. "I used to fear being alone," she admitted. "Now I fear losing who I've become." That was wisdom earned, not borrowed. When she left 2 days later, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt complete. On my final night, I wrote Angela a letter, one she wouldn't read until I returned. I told her about my mistakes, about my fears, about the strength I saw in her now, and one truth above all, that loving her didn't require holding her close, it required believing in her. As I packed to return home, I realized the distance had given me something precious, not independence, perspective. And when I returned home, the final chapter was already waiting for me. Coming home felt different. Not because the house had changed, but because I had. Angela picked me up herself. No rush, no anxiety, just a warm hug and a quiet, "I'm glad you're back." That alone told me everything. At home, nothing was out of place. The garden was thriving, bills were paid, the kitchen smelled faintly of soup. Not store-bought, but simmered with patience. "You didn't have to do all this," I said. "I wanted to," she replied. "This is our home." Our. The word settled comfortably between us. Over dinner, she told me about the shelter's progress, new partnerships, funding proposals, volunteers she trusted. She spoke with clarity, not excitement or panic, just confidence. "I finally understand leadership," she said. "It's not about being right, it's about being reliable." Later that night, I found the letter I had written her waiting on my pillow. "I didn't read it yet," she said from the hallway. "I wanted to hear it from you first." So I told her about fear, about silence, about trusting people to become who they are meant to be.
She listened, not as a daughter waiting for approval, but as a woman receiving truth. The next morning, we visited the beach house. The shelter had grown. Laughter echoed down the halls. Children ran barefoot across floors once reserved for summer vacations. "This place is alive," Angela whispered. "Yes," I said, just differently. We sat on the porch, the same porch where Robert had once read a paper, and watched the ocean stretch endlessly forward. "I used to think losing everything was the worst thing that could happen to me," Angela said. "And now? Now I know it was the beginning." That afternoon, Mr. Peterson called. "Everything is in order," he said. "The trust, the foundation, all protected." I thanked him and hung up. For the first time, there was nothing left to manage, only to live. That evening, Aurora came by with her usual curiosity. "Well," she asked, "did distance cure you?" I laughed. "No," I said. "It clarified me." She nodded knowingly. "You raised her well, but more importantly, you trusted her to rise." That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something important. I no longer feared the future, not because it was certain, but because it was shared. Angela wasn't my responsibility anymore. She was my partner, my equal, and that changed everything. But life had one final truth to offer, and it came quietly. The biggest lessons never arrive loudly. They don't come with arguments or confrontations or dramatic turning points. They come quietly, in moments so ordinary they almost slip past unnoticed, like Sunday mornings. Angela and I began sharing them without planning to. Coffee on the porch, newspapers folded but unread, the ocean air drifting in from the coast when the wind was right. No urgency, no unfinished business. One morning, Angela broke the silence. "I used to think you were strong because you endured," she said. "Now I know you were strong because you waited." I smiled at that. Waiting had once felt like weakness, like surrender. Now I understood it had been my greatest strength. The shelter stabilized completely. Angela no longer rushed from crisis to crisis. She delegated, trusted, allowed others to grow, just as I had allowed her. One afternoon, I overheard her speaking to a young volunteer. "You can't carry everyone," she said gently. "You have to teach them how to walk beside you." I didn't interrupt. That sentence was proof of everything. A month later, Angela brought home documents. "Expansion plans," she said, "but I won't move forward unless you agree." I looked at them briefly. "You don't need my permission," I said. She shook her head. "No, I want your wisdom, not your authority." There it was again. Respect without dependency. We agreed on boundaries, on pace, on sustainability. The project moved forward, slowly, responsibly. Life found a rhythm I hadn't known was possible. Then one evening, as we cleared the table, Angela asked softly, "Are you afraid of dying?" The question didn't shock me. "No," I said honestly. "I'm afraid of leaving things unfinished." She reached for my hand. "They're finished," she said, "and they're in good hands." I believed her. That night I dreamed of Robert again. He wasn't standing this time. He was sitting, relaxed, content. "She's become who she was meant to be," he said. "And so have you," I replied. When I woke, I felt no sadness, only gratitude. The next week I made my final decisions. Not legal ones, those were done. Personal ones. I gave away things quietly, not because I was preparing to leave, but because I no longer needed to hold on. Angela noticed. "You're letting go," she said. "Yes," I replied, "without disappearing." She hugged me tightly. "I'll walk with you through every season," she promised. I believed her, because she had already proven she could. And when the final chapter arrived, it wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to let go.
It happened gradually, like realizing you've been holding your breath for years and can finally exhale. Angela noticed before I did. "You don't rush anymore," she said one afternoon as we folded laundry together. "You used to move like time was chasing you." I smiled. For a long time, it was. I had spent decades believing that my role was to hold everything together: the family, the house, the emotions no one else wanted to manage. Even silence had felt like work. Now, silence felt like rest. The shelter no longer needed my guidance. Angela had built a team that didn't rely on her presence to function. She trained leaders the way gardeners tend soil, patiently, intentionally, without control. Watching her lead was strange in the best way. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush decisions. She listened. One evening, after a long meeting, she sat beside me on the porch. "I used to think leadership meant certainty," she said. "Now I know it means responsibility without ego." That was when I knew she was ready for anything. I began stepping back, not because I was tired, but because I was finished. Finished worrying, finished anticipating disaster, finished bracing for disappointment. I still cooked, still walked the garden, still laughed with Aurora over tea, but I no longer felt like the last pillar holding up the roof. One afternoon, Angela handed me a small box. "What's this?" I asked. "Something Dad wanted you to have," she said. Inside was Robert's watch, the one he wore every day for 40 years. "I found it in a safety file," she explained. "He left a note." The note was simple. "Time was always ours. I just wanted you to use it." I closed my eyes and let the meaning settle. That night, Angela and I sat together without speaking, the way people do when words would only weaken the moment. "I won't disappear," I told her quietly. "I know," she replied, "but you don't have to stay the same." She was right. I didn't need to be strong anymore. I could just be present. The following weeks passed gently. No emergencies, no crises, just life unfolding at its own pace. Then one evening, as the sun dipped low, Angela said something that stopped me. "Mom, if you ever need me, truly need me, I want you to promise you'll ask." I looked at her, really looked at her. This wasn't a daughter asking to repay a debt. This was a woman offering partnership. "I promise," I said. She nodded, satisfied. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something profound. For the first time in my life, I wasn't needed, and instead of feeling empty, I felt free. And when freedom finally arrived, it brought with it one last beautiful truth. The last lesson didn't arrive with drama. No hospital room, no final warning, no moment that demanded courage. It arrived quietly, like everything meaningful always does. One evening, Angela and I sat on the porch, the same place where so many truths had been spoken without ceremony. The sky was soft with dusk, the air cool enough to remind us that seasons always move forward. "Do you know what people ask me most?" Angela said. "What?" I replied. "How we managed to rebuild everything." I smiled. "And what do you tell them?" She thought for a moment. "That we didn't rebuild what we lost," she said. "We built what we never had." That stopped me. Because she was right. We didn't return to the life we once knew. We outgrew it. I looked at my daughter, not as the child I raised, not as the woman who once betrayed me, but as the person she had become through honesty, loss, and accountability. "You know," I said, "I once believed wealth meant protection." "And now?" she asked. "Now I know it means choice. Choice to stay, choice to leave, choice to forgive without forgetting, choice to love without control." Angela nodded slowly. "I used to think hitting rock bottom meant failure," she said. "Now I see it was the first time I was standing on something solid." That night, I slept deeply, not because I was tired, but because I was complete. Months later, the shelter expanded again.
quietly, intentionally. No headlines, no ceremonies, just rooms filled with women rediscovering themselves. Angela refused to name it after our family. "This place isn't about us," she said. "It's about what's possible." I watched her mentor others the way I once mentored her, without forcing, without rescuing, without fear. And I understood something important. The story wasn't about a daughter who betrayed her mother, or a husband who left a hidden fortune, or even a woman who planned silent justice. It was about growth. One afternoon, Aurora joined us for tea. "You know," she said, smiling knowingly, "people still talk about you." I laughed. "Let them. They say you're the strongest woman on this street." I shook my head. "No," I said. "I'm the calmest." Angela reached for my hand. "And that's stronger," she added. As the sun lowered, I felt Robert's presence, not as memory, not as grief, but as reassurance. We had done it. Not perfectly, not easily, but honestly. I didn't win by taking revenge. Angela didn't win by inheriting money. We both won by becoming people who no longer needed to prove anything. And that, I realized, was the real inheritance. Not houses, not accounts, not security, but dignity, respect, and a love strong enough to survive the truth. Final rehook or outro for narration or video. If this story moved you, ask yourself, what would you do if the people you trusted the most underestimated you? And more importantly, would you choose revenge or growth? Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what part stayed with you the most. If you enjoyed this story, your support helps keep these stories alive. Subscribe for more real-life lessons wrapped in unforgettable journeys. Until next time, with love, wisdom, and respect.